Amidst the battle of titanic creatures threatening to tear the heavens apart, one man took the place of the strongest Sannin to decide the ultimate victor. Kabuto, whose skills have been praised by even the strongest of Jonin, having been arguably the best spy in the world. Well, what if Kabuto, this crazy character who's actually kind of underrated, was forced to take on all the other Jonin in the shinobi world? Well, let's find out in addressing his most common comparison being Kakashi. Opening up with Kakashi, it's crucial to note that his performance here will dictate how he would perform against each of the other Jonin, as their best aspects are kind of relative to Kakashi, and that's where most of their comparisons come from, while he is generally called the strongest Jonin in Konoha according to the first databook, which the first fanbook also corroborates, alongside the second databook, which emphasizes Kakashi's speed as something honed to the peak of even the Jonin. Yet we know that it would be both Kabuto and Orochimaru who would spark fear into Kakashi, so much so that he would have to get back to training, realizing that Kabuto's skills would even completely put the Undertaker squad to shame due to his peak Jonin level ability. And while both Sannin and Kakashi alike hold the belief that Kabuto is relative to Kakashi, the 1 Decade 100 Ninja Guide states that he is said to possess skills equal to those of Kakashi, even much later into the series, with this guide even in particular being a 10-year anniversary guide release, meaning it covers to at least chapter 456 or the opening of the 5 Kage Summit. Another anniversary guide, the 10th Mini Chronicle, refers to Kabuto as a fighter equal to or on par with Kakashi, and while the latter could be interpreted as a reference to part 1, the former likely isn't, which is incredibly interesting, seeing as Kakashi's reputation has already reached the 4th Raikage A and Darui, where he immediately assumes that he would be the Hokage's messenger. And while this does seem to be a really high level, let me remind you that Tsunade is stated to even be someone surpassing the Hokage even prior to her regaining her will of fire, and Kabuto can battle her pretty handily even before manipulating her fear of blood, with the Naruto birthday column stating that she was struggling against Kabuto. Kabuto can also dodge multiple strikes and even analyze her moves to where he would slice her rectus femoris and bicep brachii, eliminating Tsunade's most vital weapons, prompting her to even remark that his medical ninjutsu and sharpness surpasses hers in her prime, showing how both he and Kakashi are in the same tier of fighter. It's actually not an exaggeration to say that Kabuto can scale to those higher ends more casually than Kakashi, who can fight anyone in part 1, whereas even if he loses, the enemy won't win unscathed. This also does help in eliminating the misconception of Kabuto having a poor performance against Naruto, which just isn't the case, as the chapter synopsis statement outright notes that Naruto is outmatched, with the second databook stating, quote, "The grueling trials continue on the path to mastering a new jutsu. He suffers, challenging an enemy with overwhelming power. Even as he is suddenly struck and wounded, Naruto continues to endure like a true shinobi. In his hand, tremendous chakra swirls and holds steady. The Rasengan finally activated," end quote, which the 2003 issue 5 Shonen Jump cover corroborates by calling it a jutsu left behind by the 4th Hokage. Yet with that, Naruto takes on an opponent stated to be stronger than himself in these same covers. So for Kabuto's benefit, I'm actually pretty confident in asserting that he would be more than powerful enough, or just relative enough, to be capable of beating an earlier and less adept Kakashi, who's a bit out of his prime, and won't likely struggle even too much against some of his higher techniques like the Raikiri, which would keep the chakra scalpel unmatched. However, his numerous snake abilities and scalpel techniques, with all that being into account, he could probably take on this earlier Kakashi and win until a later Kakashi is taken into account, which shouldn't sound absurd, as he implies that his own training exercises used to never be this difficult. The same 1 Decade 100 Ninja Guides holds to the two being relative, also stating that Kakashi trains and hones his skills every day, hence to his growth through the previous arcs, leaving the total winner to Kabuto if he plays the fight well against an earlier Kakashi who he's commonly compared to. Therefore, and moving on to our next combatant, Darui, the strongest Cloud Jonin, we can be pretty comfortable in assuming that Kabuto would have the upper hand physically and does have exceptional spy experience internationally and might be able to interpret how Darui would be prone to fighting, potentially even understanding the tattoo given to him by the third Raikage, who only permitted him to have it through wielding the Black Lightning, which just by its nature should be dangerous for Kabuto, although to what degree is unknown, seeing as all that's shown in the manga is it takes out numerous Zetsu, and in the anime it does hit a transformed Kinkaku, but its effects are unknown. Furthermore, other Jonin such as Baki, the strongest Jonin in Tsunegakure, are much closer to the Tokubetsu Jonin level in Konoha rather than the true pinnacle of Konoha as well, which is called the strongest village several times. And while Kumogakure does have an equal listed military might to Konoha in Fanbook 2, Kakashi can compete with Sasuke from the end of the summit, who has gained unrecognizable power from the rejuvenated form with the much stronger Susanoo and form than the one that blitzed around the version 1 Raikage, who can combo attack with Darui even when not fighting seriously, which is impressive. But we do know that Kabuto, like Kakashi, can also stack to the Hokage level, at least in lower ends, and such a title is praised to be the strongest of each nation. Even if Darui were to use his water wall to maybe combat some of Kabuto's attacks, a potential water style clash could ensue, with Kabuto's water style being able to overwhelm EMS Sasuke with his Sage Mode whenever that's in play later in the war arc. So yeah, ultimately I would suggest that if he could beat Kakashi, he would also beat Darui by virtue of that. Perhaps the case of the storm release Kekkei Genkai Laser Circus could be pretty fast due to it even hitting the likes of Kinkaku and Ginkaku, but Kabuto can tank Rasengans to the stomach, albeit barely, due to him being able to actually allocate chakra to his stomach to start healing before the attack ever lands. So yeah, Kabuto wins this fight probably like 7 out of 10 times. And wait, yo, commercial break, I guess. This video was for a commission, so if you want to commission your own video, then read the pinned comment and go check my posts. Also, subscribe if you're enjoying or don't. I don't know. Let's get back to it. After that, we have our first Kunoichi Kurenai, Konoha's Red Eyes Genjutsu monster, whose best skilling is quite ambiguous, as after fighting on the front lines countless times, she focused more on her family members, but to skill her, there is a couple ways outside of her Genjutsu that could imply she's relative to maybe Asuma or some of the other Jonin. And how Asuma fares kind of has to be discussed, so we're just going to talk about them both and then come to the conclusion of both. Firstly, her specialty is Genjutsu, with the second data book even confirming that in the perfect moment, she overturned even the Genjutsu Lord Itachi's illusion, where more importantly, if you look over at her proportional stat chart, her Taijutsu, speed, and ninjutsu are all equal to her intelligence, which is only a level below the Genjutsu, which is also noted to be kind of what she uses when she needs to catch opponents off guard and actually utilize that Genjutsu. So while sure, her Genjutsu is very crazy, right? That is her peak of peaks. But her Taijutsu, speed, and ninjutsu are only a single level below that, and this could probably allude to her being more relative to the other Jonin, like Asuma. And to ultimately discuss him, Asuma is a shinobi capable of being selected as one of the Guardian Shinobi 12, whose true power is rivaling the aforementioned Kakashi, which is rhetoric also used for Itachi and his true strength in the first data book, which is referring to his MS, which for Asuma, it's actually his close quarters combat ability, which is also stated to be the best in all of Konoha, fitting with how he could even slice up part 1 Kisame. Also, the Kakashi comparison is a bit more crucial here, as that's the best link between the two, and we know that Kabuto's primary style of fighting is his medically enhanced Taijutsu, fighting basically like a Hyuga with a scalpel, whereas Asuma relies on his wind-enhanced kunai, which are so powerful that when used by him in particular, Naruto, who typically is training with Kakashi, has the same face he usually makes when seeing unbelievable power, like in the case of Sakura. So, in fighting Kabuto, it truly will be a battle of close range, both in their specialty, with Asuma likely having a slight skill advantage over Kabuto, and him having a physical one with his abilities to also heal himself consistently being crucial if he were to be sliced somewhere. And while I suppose you could make a higher level argument for Asuma and stating that the Raikiri Sharingan Kakashi would be included, The same would just be said about Kabuto's statements from Orochimaru, Jiraiya, and the later One Decade 100 Ninja Guide and 10th Minute Chronicles. So yeah, so while I likely wouldn't agree with this interpretation, it certainly could be made in both cases. So if you take one, take the other. And if Kabuto is capable of being relative to Kakashi overall, then maybe even in those earlier matches, and we know that Asuma's superior CQC doesn't make the difference to make Kakashi not Konoha's strongest Jonin, then the same logic should follow for Kabuto. Perhaps in usual circumstances, the Burning Ash Jutsu would work, seeing as it's an implied specialty for Asuma. It's a fire style jutsu that he also could use his Sarutobi lineage to enhance, and it basically is so unique that it actually requires flint to be placed in your molars, even when its power is also being implied by the databook to be capable of hurting Izumo and Kentetsu, so it's pretty powerful. Both of those are two Jonin capable of battling Akatsuki members like Kakuzu. Also in the Tenchi Bridge reconnaissance arc, we see Kabuto fully tank three-tailed Naruto's aura explosion, which knocks Sakura unconscious, and he can nearly heal Rasengan wounds, with Orochimaru stating this a little further by stating that it would be Kabuto's medical ninjutsu that allowed for him to keep testing on these same experimental bodies. So perhaps they were dead, but Kabuto could just keep restoring their bodies back to health. Just food for thought, and it also does let us be confident in Kabuto surviving most attacks from Asuma, barring some, stab to the brain or anything like that. And then obviously Kurenai as well, who does have a masterful sense of genjutsu, although that's not foreign to Kabuto either, as he knocked the entire Chunin exams arena unconscious with his own. So perhaps the physical disparity would probably be a bit too much here, with his mindset and just overall shinobi skills allowing for him to kind of make up the difference where they might have the advantage. So I'd say Kabuto probably comes out victorious, 7, maybe 8 out of 10 times for both of those combatants. Following that, we have Yamato, who is actually really simple, believe me, as we know that his wood style is much faster than himself. You could even look at Hashirama for an example of this, and Yamato's in particular can even rival Kakashi's top speeds with his sheer leadership putting fear into Naruto. So the battle is essentially, if you think Yamato's wood style could either restrain or capture Kabuto long enough to get the victory, as we know that Kabuto is a close range fighter who can heal wounds, and Yamato is a very hard counter to this in his long distance wood style attacks like the binds used on Kakuzu in his strongest form, plus his blunt force attacks. We also know the third data book, when talking about Deidara versus Sasuke in describing the fight, notes several things, kind of like how when it's long distance, it's a big advantage. Kakashi even remarks about this when running away from Deidara, or at least he kind of implies that long distance is superior to short distance in terms of the advantage. So it kind of just comes down to a stylistic matchup. Perhaps I would give it to Yamato like 6 out of 10 times, maybe a little more depending on if you were to make the argument of Kakashi being serious about his statement about Yamato's top junior ability, but I probably wouldn't take it that far. So I probably would have Yamato coming out here, but it's likely only a stylistic advantage. In a really similar vein though, not to rush these two, but Guy is a similar case as well, although perhaps you could make the argument that Kabuto might win or outlast him unless it's a later 7th gate variation. But if it were to be an earlier and weaker Guy, then maybe if you were to presuppose that the same tier statements about both Kabuto and Kakashi have the Raikiri and all of Kakashi's jutsu included, then this might work, as we know that the Kakashi with the Raikiri and Sharingan is relative to 6th gate Guy, and the Kamui can interact with the 8th gate Guy, so perhaps the 7th gate is relative to Kakashi with all of his jutsu overall, and Kabuto may be as well. Since we know this also could be supported by Kabuto trying to avoid using any ninjutsu at all during the Konoha Crush, but it's also truly up to interpretation. However, it's crucial to note that the third databook notes Guy to be the most dedicated shinobi in history at training, so he should be progressing through the series, and if you were hard set on Kabuto stomping an earlier Kakashi, then he would do the same to Guy and vice versa. So don't take a later form of Guy and think Guy stays stagnant for the series, as that's a bit unfair. So I'd give this one to Kabuto more times than not as well. And lastly, for a bit of a bonus round, I suppose, I really want to talk about Torune, whose power is either really absurd or really trash. let's talk about it. Torune is implied to be the stronger of both he and Fu, as implied by Obito when he makes the claim that Danzo assembled an impressive array of subordinates due to how Torune's venomous nano beetles aren't chakra and work like bacteria, and he states that you're an Aburame clan shinobi who knows secret ninjutsu. You must be Shikado Aburame's brat. You've got beetle antibodies against those beetles, your foundation. Well, Danzo, you've assembled an impressive array of subordinates, end quote. And this is before Torune infects Obito, causing him to rip his own arm off, and these two fighters are smart enough to completely deduce Kamui at the youngest age ever, being 19, with the two actually being able to off-put Obito's attacks. And while Obito might not have been trying his utmost to either make that claim or to make the claim that he isn't trying his utmost or trying to murder them completely, is kind of unknown, but at the very least he was trying at the end, like how he did against Konan after underestimating her initially. So even Obito, who has a literal ability to dematerialize his body, was caught by Torune, and that should hint what would happen to Kabuto if he gets hit as well. And while we don't know if he could heal the poison, I would doubt it, as other Aburame poisons like Sugaru's would be the end of Konoha's most promising star, for example, like Shisui, so there's nothing to scoff at. And they literally force Obito to rip his arm off here. Therefore, Kabuto won't be able to get into that close range bout that he would likely prefer, or at least if he does, then he might be screwed. And it also should be safe to say that Torune could externally weaponize his beetles, as other Aburame members do that. Shino in the anime implies that if Torune gets pummeled, the bugs will just scatter and it won't really affect them. So even if the scalpel were to hit them or hit a part of the body, it's not killing the bugs necessarily or anything like that. So unironically, I would probably say that Torune really could win this, like maybe 6, maybe 7 out of 10 times, depending on how you take either assertion of him being that strong. But what do you guys think? Did I manage to perhaps shed some light on this topic? Is Kabuto actually stronger than you originally thought? Maybe he's actually closer to Kakashi than how many people just blow it off to be. Maybe should I make a Sage Kabuto gauntlet? Well, anyway, let me know in the comments section below. It would be really appreciated. And if you guys did like to see, if you guys do want to see a topic covered by me, one you thought of that you never seen, been seen before, or you just like me, want to support me, then I do have commissions available. And if you want those, like this video here, then please check my community tab for more information that will be listed. But that's all from me. More importantly, may God bless you all. Love you guys.